again welcome everyone to this webinar. The reason we're doing this is because, between the busiest airport in the world, or the second busiest, I think, at this point, and one of the busiest ports in the nation, the economy of the Southeast in particular depends upon Georgia to effectively move products and people efficiently through the state. And we saw the importance of this recently with the recent closure of I-16, as most of you all are aware of. A bridge over one of the most important thoroughfares for commerce on the East Coast that can be knocked 6 feet off its base by a dump truck showcases the work that needs to be done. It is imperative that Georgia receives its fair share of infrastructure dollars that will be distributed by the Biden administration. In turn, it is also imperative that minority firms are at the table to assist with this massive effort. With a 35% minority population, Georgia must set the example. Our hope is that this discussion is the beginning of a concerted effort to make this happen. And to be clear, this is not just a minority-focused initiative. It is a collective effort to bring increased attention to Georgia by highlighting its diverse business environment as an advantage. So let's get started. First, we want to introduce a couple of our partners who are very important to this, and many of you all know these folks. So let me give some brief bios, and then I will send it over to them to give a brief welcome. First of all, you'll hear from Stacy Key, who's the president and CEO of the Georgia Minority Supplier Development Council, and has been a leader in ensuring minority firms are active in the state for years. Stacy has been recognized as a leader throughout the state for her career accomplishments and community service. Some of her awards, her many awards and honors, include Who's Who of Black Atlanta, the Business Advocacy Award from MARTA, the Atlanta Business League's 100 Top Women of Influence, Diversity Plus Magazine's Top 25 Women in Power, Impacting Diversity, Black and Latino Council's Global Commerce Award, and the DeKalb Chamber of Commerce Apex Small Business Champion Award. And I just a personal point of privilege here. I've known Stacy for a while now, and you all know how great she is, but she has just been a steady advocate for minority businesses in this state, and someone who is always responsive to me and to many others. So with that, Stacy, let me kick it over to you to give a brief welcome.
Rock, thank you so much. I'm going to have to take you with me a couple more places so you can do a little intro for me. You do a good job there.
I'm happy to do it, Stacy.
Thank you. So first of all, let me first thank Ohio River South, Daraka, you, and as well as Howard, for your leadership in bringing us together to, as you said, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. And your vision and foresight in bringing everyone together to work collectively and intentionally on this opportunity, I'll call it an opportunity, is outstanding. Again, thank you both for your leadership and for thinking of GMSDC to be a part of this Georgia Minority Infrastructure Alliance. I'm grateful for being included. And so, for those of you that may or may not know, GMSDC is a 46-year-old organization that's been around, and our whole purpose is connecting ethnic minority businesses to corporations to do business. And so this flavor that you bought from a federal and an infrastructure is so perfect. As we continue to focus on ways of growing our minority businesses, here's a unique opportunity for us to work in partnership, collaborate, and to ensure that out of this, we continue to create jobs and economic wealth in communities of color. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I am grateful for the partnership, grateful for the opportunity to work with you. And please don't hesitate to call on me in supporting as we continue this journey. Be well, everyone.
Thank you, Stacy. Yeah, we wouldn't be doing our jobs if you weren't included on this. So thank you for participating. Next, we're going to hear from the Urban League of Greater Atlanta and John Moy, who's the Director of Policy and Legislative Affairs for the Urban League. John, like I said, he serves as the director of that office. John relocated to Atlanta from New York City in the summer of 2014. I actually met him for the first time when he did relocate, and just was able to really get a good gauge of, kind of how effective advocate he would be. He spent over 20 years. He has spent over 20 years in public service, beginning his career working for the former New York Governor Mario Cuomo. He made a career change and entered the nonprofit sector a few years ago. As I said, he was appointed in 2019 to head up the Office of Policy and Legislative Affairs. And in that capacity, he leads the team's efforts to advance the Urban League's legislative and policy agenda through collaboration with city agencies, the Atlanta City Council, Georgia State Legislature, and other key stakeholders. So, John, I will turn it over to you.
Hey, Doraka, hey, friend, it's good to see you. And I just want to echo what Stacy was saying. Thank you for your leadership and for the tremendous work that you and Howard and so many others are doing to bring all of us together. Again, my name is John Moy. I'm the policy director here. I want to certainly thank our president and CEO, Nancy Flake Johnson, for her leadership. You know, Doraka, the Urban League has been in Atlanta since for about 101 years now, on the ground, doing the work. And as a part of the work, it's about empowerment, creating the spaces for people of color to do business and to build generational wealth. So this is a tremendous opportunity. Thank you for what you're doing. It's an honor to be with you all here today. I can tell you that I spent about 10 years of my career working in New York City on highway infrastructure projects such as the one that we're about to see now. And we're really successful in terms of really bringing folks to the table. So this is a tremendous opportunity, and I thank you very much.
Thank you, John. And I think most of you all know who dealt with John. I mean, how hard he works and how responsive he is, and kind of what all he's done, not only for the Urban League, but for minority communities and the workforce community, generally speaking, in Atlanta. So, John, thanks for being here. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
All right. So now I want to kind of hurry up here and give a brief introduction. I believe Congressman Johnson is with us. He's had votes, but let me go ahead and introduce him now, and hopefully he didn't run off to a vote. But I can say personally, and I will kind of give his bio, but I was fortunate enough to be Congressman Johnson's chief of staff when he first started back in 2007. And as he will tell you, he didn't really want me to be his chief of staff, which is fine, because his wife was the one that wanted me to serve in that position. So that made all the difference. But anyway, we got started on a good foot, and I was lucky enough to serve 2.5 years under Congressman Johnson. And it was a great time. It was the latter part of my time on the Hill, but that's 2.5 years that I spent there. But for those of you who may not know Congressman Johnson, let me just read a little bit about his background, so you do know, and then he can kick this off and talk to us a little bit about what's been going on the Hill. So Congressman Johnson is in his 8th term in the U.S. House of Representatives from Georgia's 4th congressional district, which encompasses DeKalb, Gwinnett, and Newton counties and all of Rockdale County. Congressman Johnson has distinguished himself as a substantive, effective lawmaker and leading national progressive voice. He's been named one of the most effective Democrats in Congress by University of Virginia, University of Vanderbilt study. Representative Johnson has proven his ability to get things done. There's no doubt about that. The relevance to him joining us today is he, in 2007, landed a spot on the T&I committee, which is transportation and infrastructure. Sometimes we use the acronyms in the lingo, but he's been on that since 2017. So he has been in the mix of these conversations. So he is absolutely relevant. So, but as I said, he is in and out because of votes. So it looks like he had to jump off, but he's going to rejoin us. And when he does, we'll get it over to him to say a few words. But I did want to just give that introduction of him, just so you all know the relevance and the importance of Congressman Hank Johnson. So I will now introduce one of our other panelists to get started. And that is Ms. Joanne Hill, which a lot of you all in Georgia know because she spent a lot of time down here, and that's when I got to know her very well. Ms. Hill is a native of Columbia, South Carolina, and she is the chief of the Office of Business Development for the United States Department of Commerce Minority Business Development Agency. Ms. Hill has served at the MBDA for more than a decade, and in her current capacity has oversight of the Office of Business Development. She also serves as the lead federal program officer for the nationwide network of more than 40 MBDA business centers that generate $6 billion in performance goals annually. Now, she has a lot more to her bio. Unfortunately, I cannot read it all because she has just done so much, but I do want to point out for those who are interested that she received a Bachelor of Science degree from Benedict College, a Master of Business Administration degree from Emory, Corzetta Business School, and is a graduate of the Harvard Kennedy School of Government Senior Executive Fellows Program. And once again, just have been honored to know Joanne for years now, and I know what she has done and how effective she has been for companies here in Georgia and in the broader national capacity at the MBDA. So we're very lucky to have her and hear a few words from Joanne. So Joanne.
Thank you, Daraka. And it is a pleasure to be here with you today to be a part of this very important priority. Thank you to the founders and the brains and minds behind the establishment of the Georgia Minority Infrastructure Alliance. It is definitely going to be very important as we move forward to ensure that the state of Georgia and minority business enterprises get a fair share of the opportunities that will stem from this effort. So a little bit about MBDA. Our mantra is the future is now. Next slide, please. Our vision is economic prosperity for all American businesses. And our mission, we are the only federal agency that is dedicated to the growth and global competitiveness of minority business enterprises. Our passion is to ensure that these firms are capable and qualified to compete globally and to ensure that we continue their journey to transformation. Our core business is advising these firms throughout their business transformation and the life cycle of their businesses. Next slide, please. Our impact is centered on three pillars: access to capital, access to contracts, and access to market opportunities. With regard to access to capital, we support MBEs with accessing capital from lending institutions, including traditional as well as alternative lenders, including banks, mutual funds, and investors, private equity investors, angel investors, et cetera. With the agency's support in fiscal year 20, we generated more than $1 billion in capital for minority business enterprises. In the area of contracts, there we support firms akin to the opportunities that we're going to be talking about today, both public and private sector contracting opportunities. In FY20, notably, we help firms to generate and secure nearly $7 billion in contracts. And in the area of access to market opportunities, these are global market opportunities where we look to help, and we also facilitate MBEs accessing international contracts and helping corporate America to build out their global supply chains. Last year, we helped firms generate more than $3 billion in export transactions. Next slide, please. How do we do this? We have a national network of more than 50 equities located throughout America. We have a center that's located right here, a business center in Atlanta, Georgia. We have Jennifer Paisley, who is joining us today from the Atlanta MBDA Business Center. Jennifer, if you're there, I would love to have you drop your information in the chat. I'll talk more about how we help businesses through our Business Center network. We also have within our portfolio of equities, advanced manufacturing centers, export centers, a federal procurement center, American Indian, Alaska Native, and Native Hawaiian centers. And we also have a number of projects and initiatives that we run. And I'll talk and touch a little bit on those as they are applicable in our presentation. But one in particular, entrepreneurship education for the formerly incarcerated, Intercity Innovation Hub, and Enterprising Women of Color, and our Minority Growth Equity Fund initiative, which is $1 billion fund for minority businesses. Next slide, please. Just wanted to mention MedWeek. That's a huge event. We use that platform to promote national opportunities for MBEs to grow and expand their businesses, as well as gain access to resources that they might not have known about. To learn more about that, please visit the link here included, mbda.gov, MedWeek 2021. This year's MedWeek will be held September 19th through the 25th. It's going to be virtual. It's usually held in Washington, D.C., but please take a look at that when you have a chance. Next slide, please. For all of what I will be talking about today and to learn more about MBDA, to make contact with any one of our business centers located throughout America, please visit our website at mbda.gov. Again, it's an honor to be here with you today, and I'm looking forward to our dialogue. Thanks so much.
Great. Thanks, Joanne, once again for joining us. And this is, this is about making sure that, folks are tapped in and tuned in. And one of the more important ways to do that, particularly for minority businesses, is to be in touch and to be involved with the MBDA is very crucial, in order to make sure that you are in position to take advantage of not only of the infrastructure plan, but also of many other projects that'll be coming down from the federal government over the next few years. So I hope everyone will visit the website and get registered, do everything you need to do. So next, we're going to hear from, you all probably see I got a lot of my friends involved here, but they're all relevant to this conversation. But Dana Gresham, who I've known for years, we worked together on the Hill. And now he is in private practice with Mindset DC. But he has a long career, and I would say a remarkable career on the Hill. He served as Chief of Staff to Senator Doug Jones of Alabama. And he also served as Chief of Staff to Congressman Arthur Davis from Alabama as well. So he is definitely has been a part of a lot of great initiatives in that state. As Chief of Staff to Senator Jones from Alabama, Dana stood up the Senate office. He recruited, hired, developed, and managed a staff of over 40 professionals. He was a key policy and political advisor to the senator and helped develop and push through a comprehensive legislative agenda impacting historically Black colleges and universities, financial services institutions, transit authorities, healthcare workers, and military service members and their families. So where Dana is most relevant for this conversation is for nearly 8 years. He served during both terms of the Obama administration as Assistant Secretary of Governmental Affairs at the U.S. Department of Transportation. In this capacity, he was the top liaison for the Department of Transportation to the U.S. Congress, as well as tribal and state and local governments, and coordinated the legislative activities of the department's modal administration. So clearly, as we start talking about infrastructure and doing all related to infrastructure and transportation, to hear from someone who knows how it works and how everything and how to navigate the Department of Transportation is huge. So very grateful that Dana is able to join us. And I will kick it over to you now, Dana.
Hi, thanks, Doraka, for that introduction. Pleased to join you and the rest of the sponsors on this very important panel. I'm going to talk a little bit. I know we'll be joined by Representative Johnson later, and I'm certain he will talk about the legislative process, the legislation moving through the House of Representatives. I want to spend a little time in my opening remarks talking about the bipartisan infrastructure framework that is currently moving through the US Senate. Almost a month ago, President Biden and a group of 10 Republican senators announced the broad framework of a bipartisan infrastructure agreement that would inject $1.2 trillion in federal spending on infrastructure programs over an 8-year time frame. As you note, I've included a slide that breaks out the broad categories of the proposed new spending. Now, as you can see, not only does this agreement cover traditional surface infrastructure programs that are routinely reauthorized, such as highways, roads, bridges, transit, and passenger rail, it also provides additional funding for airports and port facilities, both of which are well represented within the state of Georgia, as well as expanding the definition of infrastructure to include funding for broadband internet, water and wastewater infrastructure, improvements to the electric grid, and funding for building out our electric vehicle infrastructure, such as EV charging stations. Importantly, for the purpose of this discussion, this framework has a focus on equity so that communities that have been separated by major infrastructure projects in the past will have a funding mechanism to reimagine those projects and reconnect separated communities. If passed and signed into law, this would be the highest level of funding by the federal government on infrastructure since the interstate highway system was first established in the 1950s during the Eisenhower administration. So any way you look at it, this is a massive and a historic level of federal funding. Just to put this in context, back in 2015, during the Obama administration, we proposed spending $500 billion over a 5-year period on traditional surface infrastructure. And I will tell you, our proposal was roundly criticized as being wildly ambitious and disconnected from fiscal reality. Ultimately, Congress passed a much smaller $300 billion reauthorization bill. But now, just 6 years later, we have a group of Republican senators joining a Democratic administration and agreeing to spend $1.2 trillion on not only traditional surface transportation infrastructure, but on water infrastructure, airports, ports, and waterways, and broadband. This shows you just how dramatically the ground has shifted just in the last several months. And frankly, I give the president credit for this, for proposing an ambitious and bold agenda, and importantly, for his willingness to engage with Republicans to negotiate a deal that, as I have said, if it becomes law, can only be seen as a massive and historic level of investment of federal dollars in our nation's infrastructure. Now, as is the case with most significant legislation, it is uncertain if, in fact, this bipartisan agreement will actually pass to Congress and get signed into law. And today's webinar is incredibly timely because this afternoon, the Senate is scheduled to take a procedural vote that will allow it to begin debate on this very bipartisan infrastructure framework. It's uncertain if that agreement and that procedural vote will pass. It requires 60 votes, which would, in a 50-50 Senate, require 10 senators to vote on a procedural vote to begin debate. It's uncertain if that will pass, but I will tell you that this is just the first of many votes along this pathway that are necessary to try to move a package of this size, scope, and significance. And there certainly will be ups and downs along the way with the bill's prospects hanging in the balance. But I'm fairly optimistic that something of significance will ultimately get done. And I will tell you that the Georgia congressional delegation is particularly well positioned to be strong advocates in this process. As you will hear from Congressman Johnson, he's a senior member of the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, which has jurisdiction over this bill in the House. But he's also joined by Representative Carolyn Bordeaux and Nakima Williams, who are also members of that committee. And in the Senate, there are 3 committees of jurisdiction. Senator Warnock serves on 2 of those committees, the Senate Commerce Committee and the Senate Banking Committee, and Senator Ossoff serves on 1 of those committees, the Senate Banking Committee. So this delegation is well positioned to be major players on these issues moving forward. So I would expect that we are going to have a significant amount of dollars flow back to the state. And we are hopeful that many of your companies will be well positioned to benefit from those additional dollars. With that, I look forward to the discussion and your questions.
Thanks, Dana. Really appreciate you taking time out of your busy day to join us here and help folks in Georgia knowing how serious you're all about your home state of Alabama. So thanks a lot for that. As we wait for Congressman Johnson, what I'm going to do now is I have some questions that actually Joanne and Dana alluded to some of them, but I wanted to dive in a little more and go into a little more detail to kind of flesh this out for the folks who are viewing. So I'll start, and Joanne, I'll start with you and ask you this question, and then Dana, I'll also ask you the same question after Joanne. But once again, Joanne, you kind of alluded to this, but what should minority companies in particular be doing now to get themselves in position to be a part of, like I said, this once in a generation opportunity to rebuild America? What should they be doing now from your perspective?
Absolutely. And thank you for that important question. One of the things that minority businesses should be doing is if you are a supplier and you understand, you've seen the overview that Dana just shared with regard to what are those opportunities going to look like, where they're going to be concentrated. So the thing that would be very smart and strategic is begin to look at, do I have my capability statement laid out so that when it's time to have a conversation, I can share with the interested parties or any particular potential partner, et cetera, who is my company? What are the strengths and capacity that I bring? And how can I bring value to secure these contracts? Some of these opportunities, as you've seen, are huge. And what we want to make certain that we're being strategic about is if there's an opportunity for us to align ourselves in joint ventures, strategic alliances or partnerships, that would be where we need to be thinking about how do we do that strategically. And I saw the congressman just joined Daraka, so I wasn't sure if you wanted me to stretch out a little more after he's had a chance to chime in here.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Joanne, for sure. He's in the middle of votes. You all can see he's at the Capitol right now. Oh, yeah. So Congressman Johnson, I'm gonna kick it over to you. I've already laid out your bio. Everybody knows how great you are. They already knew before, and now they know even more. So I'm gonna let you say a few words to the audience. And once again, really appreciate you taking the time to join us today in between votes with all this going on. So Congressman Johnson.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Daraka Satcher, for organizing this event. Good afternoon to everyone. And I appreciate the opportunity to speak at today's webinar recognizing the launch of the Georgia Minority Infrastructure Alliance. Thanks to the Ohio River South Project, the Georgia Minority Supplier Development Council for organizing this important panel. And thank you to my fellow panelists, Ms. Joanne Hill, and also Mr. Dana Gresham for their participation. My good friends, John Moy and Stacy Key, I was able to see them a little earlier on the video. And all others who are on the Zoom call, hello. Our nation's infrastructure, our transportation system in particular, is in desperate need of investment, and particularly equitable investment that elevates communities of color and minority and women-owned businesses. For decades, access to federal highway and transit funding has benefited too few. Now, more than ever, in the wake of a pandemic that has devastated communities, especially Black Americans and minority communities who have made up the heart of essential workers, we need to take bold action to equitably rebuild our nation's infrastructure. And that means prioritizing the concerns of those long burdened by historically unjust transportation policy. It's essential that we reinvest in our nation equitably. We must undo decades of highway and construction planning that has bifurcated communities of color, and we must break down unjust barriers to employment and access to clean air and water that have impacted so many African Americans and communities of color. Black Americans deserve to live in vibrant, economically prosperous, and environmentally sustainable neighborhoods, and this should be our future. The Invest in America Act, which passed the House of Representatives this summer, makes transformative investments in transit accessibility, reduces greenhouse gas emissions, and elevates racial and economic and environmental justice. The Invest Act includes language that I champion, which reauthorize and update the DOT's Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Program, also known as the DBE program. This legislation makes the size standard more equitable for small minority-owned contracting businesses and thus expands opportunities for disadvantaged businesses to compete for federal transportation projects. In addition, my bill, the Safe Roads Act of 2021, was incorporated into the Invest Act. And this provision mandates automatic emergency braking, or AEB, technology for large heavy-duty truck tractors. This sensible data-driven mandate will help us see AEB technology on large trucks as swiftly as possible, making our roads safer and less vulnerable to truck-related crashes. And that's especially important nowadays because traffic deaths among Black Americans have been on the rise during the pandemic. The Invest Act also expands opportunities for Americans across race, gender, and socioeconomic background through the inclusion of member-designated projects, earmarks in other words, 5 of which would directly benefit Georgia's 4th district should the Invest Act become law. And these spending measures include bus paratransit vehicle acquisition for local Route 70, Martyr Route 115, Covington Highway, new bus rapid transit along US 78, North Avondale Road, complete streets, and the Stonecrest Transit Hub. As a member of Congress, my mission has long been to better serve the American people, and more recently, to offer them hope that with vaccines, we will recover from this pandemic. We understand now, in a way we might not have before, that transportation is at the nexus of a quality job and the quality of life. Underinvestment in transit agencies stymies the ability of Americans to access healthcare, childcare, and a quality education, as well as provide these to others. And that brings me to a piece of legislation I most recently introduced in the House, the Stronger Communities Through Better Transit Act. This bill would establish a first ever transit operating fund so that urban and rural transit agencies can provide frequent, high quality, and dependable transit. Let's reimagine our communities operate let's imagine how our communities operate so Americans no longer wait an hour for the next bus or train to arrive. I know we feel that in Atlanta with Marta. As we know, the color of a person's skin unduly impacts whether she or he lives in a transit desert, and we're long overdue to rectify that disparity. And as you know, Congress is comprised of many voices, and the legislative process works its way through an untold number of conversations before a final product is reached. Right now, the INVEST Act has passed the House and awaits action in the Senate. My hope is that the bipartisan infrastructure framework that is currently being drafted in the Senate includes large swaths of the INVEST Act. That would be a sensible approach because it would be bicameral and bipartisan, both of which are essential. However, as we move forward in this process, I believe that our community projects must be prioritized in the final version of the legislation. Similarly, the legislation must prioritize policies addressing climate change and environmental justice issues by reducing fossil fuel emissions and increasing investments in public transit to expand transportation opportunities for communities across America. Without these three pillars, that final package risks losing support from House Democrats. As a society, we are on the cusp of change. The pandemic appears to be receding, and two major infrastructure packages are anticipated to move through Congress and reach the president's desk. The time is right for transformative change in our country, change that elevates communities of color and the historically marginalized to create transportation opportunities for all Americans. So thank you, and I look forward to answering some of your questions.
Yeah, thank you, Congressman Johnson. I really appreciate that. And I just want to make a point here. I mean, I spent 8 years on the Hill, and Dana can attest to this. He spent even longer. But, you know, there are the differences between kind of workhorses and show horses. There are some who kind of do a good job of combining the two. But as you listen to Congressman Johnson, I think it's quite clear, you know, what type of congressman he is. I mean, in terms of the depth of information that he provides. And that's why members of Congress are there. They're there to represent us and to bring funding to their communities and to inform us, just like Congressman Johnson just did, about what's going on. And it sometimes it actually troubles me that workhorses like that don't get the kind of press that some of the other folks get, and that's fine. But we just need to recognize what people like Congressman Johnson are doing for us up in DC. And so, Congressman Johnson, I know you're kind of in the middle of votes, so just let me know when you need to go. But
yeah, I'm gonna slip out right quick.
Okay.
And, capture this next vote.
Okay.
And then I'll come back.
Okay. All right. Sounds good, sir.
All right. Thank you.
All right now. Okay. So we'll circle back with him when he comes back. But Joanne, I know you're kind of in the middle of answering that question. I didn't know if you had more that you wanted to add.
Oh, thank you, Doraka. I really just wanted to follow on to the point that I was making with regard to companies beginning to look at how they position themselves so that they are prepared to go after some of these incredible transportation opportunities that are going to be put forth. One of the things that I would love to be able to just drop that was just pointed out by the congressman, the Department of Transportation and the DBE program, notably the DBE certification. I think that it's going to be important for companies, if they do not have that certification, they need to secure it.
Yeah.
And we'll talk more about that, but that is one of the most important certifications I feel for this particular opportunity centered on infrastructure that's going to be vital for minority, women, and small, medium enterprises.
Yeah, and that's a perfect segue because Dana, I'm going to ask you the same question, which is basically, you know, from your perspective, what should companies be doing? And Joanne kind of, you know, started and kind of hit on some of those points, but we'll love to kind of hear you flesh that out some more.
Yeah, thanks for that question. I would just, the only thing is what I would add is that the way the sort of funding regime and process works on the federal level, I'll give you the U.S. Department of Transportation essentially serves as a pass-through, funding pass-through for all of these federal dollars. Georgia in FY 2021, for example, received about $2.8 billion in funding. Of that $2.8 billion, $1.4 billion was federal dollars, and that was supplemented by another $800 billion of state dollars that are funded through your gas tax, and then another $573 billion on the local level. So mostly funds, the majority of those funds, again, come from the federal level, but they're supplemented by the states. Some states do a better job of supplementing in funding their highway programs than other states. Georgia does a very good job in supplementing the federal dollars that come through. But those funding decisions then are made, and prioritization is made at the state level. So I would suggest, to the extent that folks are interested in being engaged in that contracting process, they really do need to develop a relationships with your state DOT. And importantly, your MPOs. The MPOs are sort of within the state of Georgia. There are 16 MPOs. They all have statutory authority to build their own infrastructure plan and to fund those. And the state cedes to those funding prioritizations. So to the extent—
what MPO stands for those?
I'm sorry. Metropolitan Planning Organization. It's a local governmental entity that sort of represents the region. There are 16 of them in Georgia. One is based there in Atlanta, and they will talk to all the local stakeholders and come up with a 4 or 5 year transportation plan and prioritize spending for those individual projects on that 5-year plan. Submit those to the state, and the state signs off on it. So FY21, the state received, as I said, about $2.8 billion in combined federal and state funding under the current funding regime, which we all anticipate will be dramatically increased. So you can see those funding levels go up in magnitude of over $1 billion of additional funding coming to the state. So it's very important. The state will then have to reassess their funding priorities and figure out what projects are funded when. So it's very important for businesses to begin developing those relationships, to have your certifications, to be on the DBE program, so that you're well positioned when the state, when the federal dollar spigot open, the state is going to want to go to firms that are ready to go. And so if you're not well positioned, if you're not ready to go on day one, it's going to be difficult to get in line. So you want to be ready from the beginning.
Yeah. John, do you want to speak to the state DOT real quick?
Yeah. As a person who served at the state DOT in New York City, in awarding billions of contracting dollars, you know, the difficulty that we had was certainly by the time our folks got to the table, you know, it was difficult navigating, you know, the government. You know, how do you do business with the state? You know, there are certain requirements in terms of with respect to awarding contracts. So just to echo what Joanna, certainly what Dana was saying, that you know now is the time to either get your DBE certification or certainly start making relationships with the DOT officials. I can tell you personally that within any DOT, you know, you're used to working with certain organizations, certain companies. You just have those relationships. You know, people talk, not that there's just any type of any impropriety, but now is the time to reach out to your construction division or to whether it's a commissioner or some representative there, and start, you know, setting the stage now that you will be able to engage and participate certainly when the time comes.
So Doraka, let me add to that. I sit on the State Transportation Board for GDOT, representing the 5th Congressional District. And for anybody who is interested in doing business, that, as you said, the time is now. We have a Equal Access Committee that is part of the board that is focused primarily on ensuring disadvantaged businesses have a seat at the table and get opportunities. We have a third party that administers for us programs and understanding bonding and education and supportive services. So the time is now. I can be reached at any time via sk@dot.ga.gov, or you can go onto the GDOT website, but the time is now. And as you can imagine, I think they've talked about many of the contracts are very large. So there may be partnerships or alliances or other things that need to be in place. So again, we can't stress enough the urgency around being intentional about action and timing to take advantage of it. But again, GDOT has a lot of resources available that can help as we continue to navigate through this process.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was definitely going to bring you in, Stacey, because I know you have a lot to say about this. I could feel the energy coming from you, so I was ready to go with you. But I do want to jump to audience Q&A because we want to make sure those are important questions, obviously more important than mine. So we want to make sure we get to that. And to kind of manage that, I want to turn it over to Veronica Mondano Torres, who's the president and CEO of the Georgia Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, to handle those questions. Veronica.
Good afternoon. Welcome. Hello to everybody. Thank you to Ohio River South for the opportunity for the Georgia Hispanic Chamber of Commerce to be a part of this conversation and this alliance, ensuring we're driving inclusion in this particular space. So the Georgia Hispanic Chamber of Commerce has been around for 36 years. Our mission is to promote and support the domestic and international economic development of the Hispanic businesses, individuals, and to serve as a link between non-Hispanic entities and the Hispanic market. And our focus moving forward really is on the growth and sustainability of our Hispanic business enterprises and how we can ensure that they are included in this conversation, which we're a part of today. So again, thank you very much. I'm going to be helping out here with moderating some of the audience questions. The first question that I see here is so much of the challenges in the DBE, MBE contracting is capitalizing minority firms so they can meet the requirements of insurance, bonding, staffing, and more. How have the national calls for economic and racial equality impacted the government contracting space? And if you could, what would you change about the DBE, MBE requirements? And that's open to any of our guest panelists today.
Well, I'll start. I think the comments that were made by the congressman with that deal specifically with the size requirements are the kind of policy changes that we need to ensure that small, medium enterprises, minority business enterprises have a fair chance at procuring these opportunities. The other important factor I feel with regard to them in the area of financing is, and Stacey referenced it with regard to bonding. Oftentimes what I found in my 20 plus years of sitting in this seat and working with minority business enterprises is you really do need to align yourself with partners that have capacity. And the way you do that is if you're not involved with trade associations strategically like the National Association of Minority Contractors, NAMAC, okay? They generate over $1 billion a year in opportunities, and they are very strategic in how they pull in to create joint ventures, teaming arrangements, and partnerships for MBEs who don't quite have the capacity, but they have a core competency that brings very, really great added value to a team that could go after some of these incredible opportunities.
Thank you for that answer,
Thank you,
Joanne. Veronica, I'm sorry, if you don't mind, I had Congressman Johnson's back, and so I wanted to have him answer one question, and then we can jump back to Q&A if that's okay. But Congressman Johnson, since actually Dana had mentioned that this is a kind of pivotal day with the infrastructure bill and particularly what's going on in the Senate, and I thought it'd just be good for folks to hear from you, kind of what's going on from your perspective behind the scenes right now as we talk with this infrastructure bill.
Yeah, bottom line, the Senate bipartisan bill, which as of, I'm not sure if the bill has actually been drawn yet, if there's actually paperwork or whether or not they're still talking about it. I think they're still trying to iron out details, but from the outline of what's in the Senate bipartisan bill is disappointing to people who believe that this is a transformative moment, that we need to do more than just build more roads. We need to be investing in our green infrastructure, our conversion and transition into a new way of powering vehicles. So that means electricity. And so which has to do with climate change. And so for some folks, climate change and measures that move us away from fossil fuels are almost a non-starter, but at the very least, it's something that they want to water down and try to ignore. And so we see that loud and clear in the Senate bipartisan bill. And the biggest headache or heartburn with it at this point over here in the House is the fact that it was arrived at without any input from the House. And the House, of course, has passed a transformative piece of legislation known as the INVEST Act. It's a highway and transit reauthorization bill that incorporates far-reaching measures that have to do with equity as well as climate change, housing, and those are the kinds of transformative measures that we are poised in Congress to accomplish right now during this very short window where we have Democrats in control of both houses of Congress and the Senate. So, talks will begin. They may have already begun in terms of between House and Senate. I haven't seen the news today. I know that Mitch McConnell was planning on insisting that there be a vote on whatever it is the Senate has come up with bipartisanly, so that we can get to the end of that. If it's going to be a facade, get to the end of that facade and then move on to budget reconciliation and doing a infrastructure plan that deals with spending that fits within the reconciliation process that will enable the Senate to be able to pass something with a 50-vote majority as opposed to a 60-vote requirement as required by the filibuster.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where we are now. It's kind of everything is up in the air. The House is scheduled to have one more week of work before we exit Washington, D.C. for the legislatively mandated August recess. The Senate,
which is not really a recess, but you know that.
Well,
as hard as you work during that time.
But we are out of Washington, D.C. during that time, and there are no hearings that are scheduled, either virtually or in person. But that can always change. And I think the House stands ready to do whatever we need to do during the month of August to make infrastructure happen.
Yeah. And there's going to be a lot of back and forth here. From my experience, the folks who benefit the most are the folks who know what's going on in DC. Something's going to happen here, but there's going to be some back and forth. So I would definitely encourage folks to pay attention to what's going on so they be in best position. So Veronica, I'm sorry. Let me turn it back over to you, and we'll hear some more questions from the audience.
Wonderful, Doraka. Thank you so much. I go back to the question, Ms. Joanne Hill. I don't know if you had anything in addition to add to the question around the DBE, MBE contracting, anything that you would change regarding the requirements or the focus on capitalizing minority firms and requirements of meeting insurance and bonding, et cetera. Did you want to add anything to that question? And you're on mute, unfortunately.
That's the new catch-all phrase since we've been in this telework world, right? You're on mute.
Absolutely.
But I would like to defer to Stacy. I heard her talk about what they're doing with the DOT in the state of Georgia to allow her to weigh in on that as well.
Thank you, my friend Joanne. And so just to add to that again, as we go down this path, I think it's going to be key. One of the things as we started this journey is I wanted to get a look and feel for the kinds of companies and businesses that we currently at GDOT do business with. And making sure and understanding the capacity and some capability. And so one of the key things that the department is going to be focused on is how do we mentor to help grow some of those businesses that we're currently doing business today? How do we encourage the partnerships so that, again, broadening the pool? And Kimberly King, who heads up the program at GDOT, has done a great job in developing some new programs and initiatives such that we can help some of the companies today that may not have an opportunity in the past, may not have had an opportunity in the past to do business with GDOT, but they have an opportunity for the future because of the mentoring, the partnering, the strategic alliance pieces. So all of those things are on the table and being considered. And I think that's very timely as we look at this infrastructure. And again, the goal has got to be is how do we, as this opportunity, create as many jobs and wealth as possible in communities of color? And so we do that by, again, the partnerships, the alliances, understanding the capital needs. And do we have a bonding partner as part of this that can provide that? All of those things that we know they need to be successful, making sure the Georgia Minority Infrastructure Alliance has those relationships to cultivate what's needed so that, again, out of it, we create jobs and wealth in communities of color.
And Stacey Kimberly King is on, and she actually dropped her information in the chat for those who wanted to.
Yes,
Thanks for joining us, Kimberly.
She does a good job.
Doraka, I just wanted to add to what Stacy was saying and how important mentorships, a program, mentor protege partnerships are. So early on in my tenure at the Urban League, we brought in a company, Turner Construction, who has a super duper mentoring a protege program. Yeah. We brought Turner in, partnered with the Urban League, partnered with the City of Atlanta to build that pipeline. And we did it for about 4 years to make sure that our folks, that when these opportunities, this generational transformative opportunity is here, that they have the expertise now in terms of bonding and estimating to be prepared to take advantage of these opportunities. So Stacy, you were certainly spot on in terms of these partnerships, mentoring partnerships. It certainly will build that pipeline for our folks, certainly along the way.
So John, let me take a shameless plug here. So 10 years ago, GMSDC took on the state of Georgia's Mentor Protege program. The person that headed that program for me is now the president and CEO of the Georgia Hispanic Chamber, Veronica Maldonado Torres. She championed that program for 10 years and grew that program. And so now she's heading the chamber. So she understands as well what's needed and how these programs can impact the communities of color.
Absolutely. Thank you, Stacy. And it's definitely, I think it's a passion for all of us that are in the economic development space. And we continue to see the value in investing and building that pipeline. It's really critical. And at a time like now, Stacy is exciting. And for the rest of our, dream team here, talking about the Minority Infrastructure Alliance, to really make sure that our communities are invested in that mentoring initiatives and opportunities that exist, and really building the community around it. I think that's been one of the biggest things that we realized through the program development experiences, building the ecosystem around it. And we're in a great place because we have that. We just need to continue to do more work together to build the pipeline wherever it is that they are. So Thank you so much, Stacy, for that. Did anybody else want to add to this particular question on anything that you would change regarding the DBE MBE requirements before we shift off to the next one?
Well, I would sort of add and touching on this issue. I think, as the congressman said, they are in the process right now of drafting federal legislation. And so to the extent that there are some changes, now is the time to be engaged in that sort of legislative process. Secondly, I would just sort of say, from my experience as a sort of 8-year senior staffer at the Department of Transportation during the Obama administration, one of this sort of frustration is that there are federal programs put in place to enable more minority contractors to be engaged in this sort of contracting process, but there are limited enforcement tools to oversee those programs. And so to the extent that their programs exist, there's a limited ability to hold states accountable and contracting entities accountable for broadening the aperture of contractors. So that is an area that most folks believe that should be additional policy changes.
Great. Well, we're going to shift off here to an audience question from Mike Kemp. And the question is, how do you identify the companies that are ready to do business today? Mentorships are good, but how do we find companies that can take advantage of the contract opportunity as the prime for a particular scope of work?
Sure, I can jump in there. We have my wonderful colleague here, Stacy Key, with the NMSDC portfolio, but I have to put a plug in for the Atlanta MBDA Business Center that recently started a Start to Build program that is designed for construction companies. One of the things that we do exceptionally well as an agency at MBDA, with our more than 50 years of helping to grow and scale minority businesses, is help them to source opportunities for vetted, high quality firms to bid and go after these contract opportunities. So if you're looking for partners, if you're looking to source a particular opportunity where you'd like to have companies that have been vetted, that are high quality, we're the agency that you should be looking to. We, as I indicated at the top of the hour, we have a presence in more than 40 states. We have business centers that have exceptional staff. A huge part of what we do, you saw, we help these firms generate nearly $7 billion in procurement opportunities over the past fiscal year in FY20.
And just to add to that, from a GDOT perspective, it's Kimberly King. We have opportunities at GDOT, and we have supportive services will help you in understanding. One, they'll identify companies that they're currently DBE certified that can meet the requirements, but the company also has to engage and want to do business with GDOT. This is not a passive sport. It is intentional and requires action. So if you think your company has the capacity and the capability and the resources to do business with GDOT, I recommend you reach out to Ms. King if you're not DBE certified. If you are currently DBE certified and you think you're big bag and audacious and want to be a prime, she can also talk to you about that as well, because that's, as my grandmother said, that's grown folk business. When you're talking about being a prime with GDOT, that is clearly. So, but I would say reach out. Again, we've got infrastructure, we've got the support there that can help you, but the time is now to make sure you have what you need, not when this whole thing, rolls out. The time is now to make that assessment of your business to see if you're ready to do business with GDOT.
Hey, Stacy, I just want to piggyback on that, and I just want to share with you all personally that I probably attended more pre-construction meetings than I care to admit to. And certainly during that time, that's really where the rubber hits the road. And I've heard a million times from prime contractors, we can't find folks. We can't find folks. And quite often, they'll sort of revert back to the relationships that they have. So I would say certainly, just to echo that, certainly, getting that DVE certification is certainly first and foremost. Engaging with your local, certainly with GDOT, certainly now is the time to do that. And know who the players are internally within GDOT. I mean, there are people just like you and I who are actually going to, do, procedural and contracting things, whether it's engineers within the organization, and be proactive. There are certain companies and firms that do business over and over. It's not a large group of folks, maybe 10, 20 big guys in the state of Georgia that get the contracts over and over. Find out who they are. Do a cold call. Knock, hi, my name is John Moy. I own the XYZ construction firm or whatever, and make those relationships, because people do business with people that they know and people that they trust. The time is now.
Let me just add, Kimberly King can help facilitate some of those sessions as well. So like you said, there's about 10 or 20 big ones that do business, the primes. GDOT can facilitate meet the prime sessions so that you know who the players are, you know who they're looking for. Big people do business with who they know, like, and trust.
And I definitely want to add, going back to the comment that was, mentoring programs are great, but, and especially for our businesses on today, again, we're also talking about risk mitigation and the confidence in recommending businesses that are ready and equipped for this. And I just want to remind them that going through these types of programs also ensures that there is that confidence that you're ready for it. So remove any kind of excuses and make sure that you are engaged in some type of business development, mentorship program, capacity building, where you are demonstrating that you're on that growth trajectory. You've got everything ready from an internal aspect. You've got all the players there. That's going to help people make a stronger recommendation. So just a little plug there to remind folks of, that these programs are built on purpose, and also ensure that you take advantage of them from an educational standpoint. New level, I'm not going to say the word, but new level, new challenges, and they're there for you. But they also give us the confidence, those people that are able to make the recommendations of folks that are kind of tried and true and been there. So check out those opportunities. I think all of our respective organizations have some level of mentoring or capacity building programs that can support you on that and make sure that that strong recommendation can come there. I want to segue to what may be our last question here, and again, open for all. Georgia has spent a lot of time in the national news over the past few years. How has our ascending to the forefront of the national political news impacted the attention and investment we receive from the federal government? And that is open again to any of our friends here.
As a recovering politician, no shade at all, DeRocca, and listen, Georgia is uniquely positioned right now, and it's no accident that when you take a look at what's going on, the president has been here a couple of times. We were with him not too long ago. We are positioned in terms of our congressional delegation, House and Senate. So, now's the time to do that. I think the fact that we had record turnouts certainly has put us on the map. It is no accident that we are where we are. So, it's a great place to be, quite frankly. And we have leadership. So, for example, Congressman Tim Bishop is, I believe, DeRocca, correct me, is a ranking member on the powerful House Appropriations Committee. So it's, we are certainly uniquely positioned right now in this moment, while we have, while this is a nonpartisan call, while there are certain parties in play that to take advantage of that.
Yeah, Congressman Sanford Bishop is high ranking on appropriations, absolutely.
And I just add, as someone who is a sort of practitioner in the sort of policy and advocacy space in Washington, long-term House and Senate staffer as well. I think it is significant that, and it is notable that if you ask folks on the Senate, they will credit Senator Warnock and Senator Ossoff for giving the Democrats the majority of the Senate. That's acknowledged and known within Congress and within the administration. And so, and elections have consequences, and there has been a change in the policy priorities of the administration within the Senate. Absent the Democrats taking control, even with a one-seat majority in the Senate, some of these plans that we're now discussing as a real possibility would not occur. You would not be able to get a budget reconciliation done absent the Democrats controlling the Senate, and a budget resolution that speaks to some of these infrastructure and human infrastructure priorities. You may, as has been done in the past, be able to get a budget reconciliation act around taxes, but that's perhaps is a different policy prioritization. So it is noted that Georgia has sort of delivered the majority, and that creates opportunities. You mentioned Sanford Bishop in the delegation. Congressman Scott is the chair of the House Ag Committee, which is a significant platform for the state. You have 3 members on the House T&I Committee, as I said before. Senator Warnock is on 2 of the 3 authorization committees in the Senate. All of those guys, Senator Ossoff is on the banking committee that has jurisdiction over transit. So all of those members will have a voice, a powerful voice in the shape of these priorities. I will tell you, when those members speak in a unified voice, the power structure within DC listens.
Wonderful, thank you. If anybody else wants to add before we
Monica,
shift off?
I just want to add one thing to what Stacy was saying in terms of organization. And I'll tell anybody, you have to be a part of something. You can't be out there by yourself. And I've worked for elected officials, and I worked for agencies, but you have to have folks knocking on the doors on the outside. Sometimes, that support's not going to come from the inside, but you need organizations like this organization that you all have put together, knocking hard. And because, quite frankly, when you knock, they do listen. And it's okay sometimes. I think John Lewis said certainly has to be good trouble, but in order to get these resources to our folks and make sure that it's meaningful in terms of participation, we're going to have to knock, and we're going to have to knock loud and together as one band, one sound.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, John. Thank you to the entire panel group here today, giving us just incredible information. I'm going to go ahead and segue to Howard Franklin, who I love. It says here, he's a lobbyist by trade and a change maker at heart. And truly, that's what he is. That's why we're actually all here today. He's the founder and managing partner of Ohio River South, a civic-minded and Southern-focused advocacy firm named for the body of water that was once America's natural dividing line. Ohio River South solves public sector challenges in America's fastest growing region. Thank you so much and for putting this together and bringing the alliance. I hand it over to you, Howard.
Thank you, Veronica, and good afternoon, everybody. This has been amazing. When Doraka just a few weeks ago first brought this idea to Ohio River South, we knew we had, as we discussed it, an idea whose time had come, an idea where there was a ton of interest and activity around the discussion of what's happening in Washington, D.C. But what we've seen this afternoon is really just confirmed for me, and I'm sure for everyone else who's been in attendance, that this is an important conversation and needs to happen now, and that it needs to go from discussion to action. And so appreciate everybody who's been here. As Veronica mentioned, my name's Howard Franklin. I'm the managing partner of Ohio River South, and just want to extend a sincere thanks to everyone who took the time to join us today. I also want to thank everyone who has taken the stage or worked toward the success of this event over the last several weeks. Special thanks to our partners, obviously the Atlanta Urban League, the Georgia Minority Supplier Development Council, the Georgia Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, the Atlanta Business League, and the Common Good Agency. This has just been a tremendous conversation, and I know, Atlanta is not bereft of important and meaningful conversations. We're really intentional about taking the information you heard here today and operationalizing it, making sure that the organizations in the state of Georgia, whether they're businesses, whether they're governments, whether they're advocacy organizations, social change and social justice organizations, have what they need to be successful and to make sure that Georgians are successful. So we will continue to advocate on these issues. Look out for more from us in the realm of programming and discussions and advocacy, as I mentioned before. We certainly want to continue to solicit your feedback and want you to continue to share this information and this invitation to join us with your friends, your colleagues, your coworkers, your clients. So I hope the rest of you will make this a productive rest of your day. And we at GMI Alliance look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you, everybody.